Skywalker. I have been expecting you.
I got a really good feeling about this.
Don't get technical with me.
As Obi-Wan would say, Q.
Now I'm lost. What are you going for?
I just thought you were going to say, may the force be with you.
What does Obi-Wan say? He says hello there, but we're leaving, so why would I say that?
We would be honored if you would join us.
There he is.
Hey!
And we have Josiah, who was supposed to do the intro, but, you know.
Yeah. If anyone's watching, this is your first time. I'd like to say that this never happens, but it kind of happens often. So, just bear with us as we continue to do this the same way for about a year.
I mean, I've made adjustments, but, you know, every time there's an update, something else breaks.
Yeah. So anyways, well, today we're going to be talking about the newest episode of The Mandalorian, which is going to be episode 2 or chapter 18, as we don't have a title. It is nice. We got the title for episode 1, which is The Apostate, very fitting. So we're going to be talking a little bit about what happens next in that story, as well as later. We're also going to be talking about The Bad Batch. So the newest episode of The Bad Batch, which was The Outpost, episode 12. So we can start jumping right into The Mandalorian.
Well, who else was just ecstatic to see Tatooine at the start of the episode? Like, I always love when we'll go to Tatooine just because we get Pelly.
Yeah.
and it's Bunta week.
Oh yeah, Bunta week. Yeah.
And that was great. And then like the racing, I felt like they did that little racing jab around when they first came in the speeders, and they were trying to like, maybe it was a jab at everyone, calling the speeder bike scene in Book of Boba Fett that looked slow. Mm-hmm. I'm like, and so when you got that overview, it was kind of like, well, I can't really go much faster. Look how tight that is.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then we get Pelly trying to fix their speeder for the roadie. I like to think that, you know, she didn't plan for it to be stolen from the Jawas. She just knew where to get the parts, right? Like she didn't tell him to go, you know, wreck a speeder so she could sell parts back to him.
Mm-hmm.
She just knew where to go for the parts is all.
Yeah, and paint them a different color so nobody notices.
Yeah. Paint them a different color so they don't find out. That was funny. She's one of the funniest characters, and the pit droids push it back out onto the street.
Yeah.
And then she talks Din into this is kind of, this whole episode was really interesting to me because I first thought, okay, our side quest is going to be getting IG-11, right?
Yeah.
First thing that happens in this episode is like, okay, instead of getting IG-11, we're just going to skip that. That was kind of the goal, but we're not doing that anymore.
Yeah.
So he gets Red 5. Also, one thing I wanted to point out. This episode, I feel very vindicated because it proved me right, and I was saying that this season is not going to be just about him getting to the waters and redeeming himself. Just for the fact of that it happened in this episode, knowing we have a lot more episodes to come, just proves my entire thought of what was going to happen in this episode, that there's going to be a lot more to the story than just that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's the way all the trailers pointed it out. Like they thought, okay, that's where the point of this season is going to be him trying to redeem himself for taking his helmet off. And that's the way every trailer has oriented our thinking. And we've basically already got that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this was an amazing episode just all the way around. I feel like it being less than an hour but having this much amazing content, that's where I would like to, if if we get an episode that's less than 55 minutes, it's got to be something like this. To just, it's packed, you have everything in it, you have the laughs, you got the edge of your seat moments, you have like action. It was really good. And then you have obviously like the heartwarming cute moments, Grogu jumping out, force jumping out or whatever into her arms at the beginning. That was cute. And yeah, obviously later in the episode when he's doing everything he can to get to Bo-Katan to save Din is awesome too. But yeah, I feel like this was a super well-rounded episode. You feel like you got a lot, you got your money's worth for sure out of this episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a lot, and it's when I first saw the runtime, and I'm thinking as I'm watching the episode, oh, they're not going to get to that part. They're going to quit right now. They're not going to get to that part. And then I'm like, how'd they squeeze so much in the runtime? What was 44 minutes?
Yeah,
It felt like there was a lot that happened in 44 minutes because we go all the way from Tatooine to the waters of Mandalore, the living waters of Mandalore.
Yeah,
And-
you get two different, basically alien species in this one too, that you kind of like briefly learn about one, and then the other one, the mysterious one eye or whatever at the end. It was such a cool thing that they did because it was such a big part of the show, but it still had like a bunch of mystery that made you want to know more, like what is this thing, or who is this thing, and why is it there, and has it always been there, like it just left you with a lot of questions too.
I got like goosebumps on something. Like, no way, did they just show us that already in episode 2? I'm like, oh my goodness, yes, we're gonna get to that, something about that this season.
Yeah.
And we're gonna the mythosaur.
Oh yeah, and then that on top of everything else, that just
actually,
I know, I can't even believe it.
I was like,
it blows my mind that, like, let alone that it was like implied or inferred that it was there, but then you like get to see it as like just like the beam of the light, which is awesome that they didn't give it all, but like, oh man, that was crazy. I was like, what the heck?
you basically saw a little bit of its eye and this one side tusk.
Yeah.
And I was just like, no, we're there already. and then the episode, they come up out of the water and the episode just ends, and I'm like, I need more.
Like Kylo Ren.
Yeah, more.
Oh man, yeah, it's crazy.
It was also kind of really interesting because this was almost Bo-Katan's episode.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, she comes in, she kicks the butt, and then she looks over at Grogu and go, "What? You think your dad was the only Mandalorian?"
I know, I love that part. It's the best. After she just like murked that, that was pretty sweet. And then another thing that it kind of just reminded me of too on this episode in general is I have been hearing and seeing little things about people saying about like John and Dave have been saying that we're going to get to see Grogu talk. I haven't I don't know if you guys have like watched videos or saw whatever that interview was, but I haven't. And so this one, I'm like, oh man, maybe there's some truth to this, because this one multiple times they made it seem like, oh, he's trying to say something, or, oh, did he just say that or whatever. So I was like, maybe we are going to get to hear him say some words on this season.
I mean, he practically talked to R5. He said, "Go there."
Yeah.
Yeah. What is his first legitimate word?
Although Pelly seemed to think he said Pelly.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That was his first word, Pelly.
Oh man. Yeah, that was such a cool moment too. And you're getting the payoff from episode 1 and episode 2 of Din like basically already teaching him how to be a Mandalorian, the importance of all these different things. And then he took what he learned, being able to, obviously, fly the ship, navigate, know where to go, get back, that's pretty awesome.
And even go ahead, Q.
Well, I was just gonna say that, like, he's talked about this being Bo-Katan's episode, and when you see her when she fights the Alamites, the monsters, the creatures in in Mandalore, you could see that she handled herself better than Mando did when she fought him.
Yes.
And then especially you see her later get the Darksaber, which was awesome. But she actually knew how to use it. Unlike even still, Mando, when he tried to use it against the Alamites, he still struggled to use that. It was still heavy, it was imbalanced for him. And then when she got it, it just felt right in her hand.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if we're either gonna get her training Mando like that, or if she's just gonna take it. I don't know. I'm torn just because I love her character because we've seen so much of it. But I still want her to be the ruler of the Mandalorians. But I feel like this being the Mandalorian about Din Djarin, that we're probably going to get him as the leader of the Mandalorians. But if we are, he's going to need some training from Bo for sure. And then which one of them is going to ride the Mythosaur?
That is so hard because, like, I think, like you said, like, Bo-Katan is like one of my favorite characters just across the board. And so I think being able to see her in live action, that it's Katie Sackhoff, secondly, I mean, just all of that, it's like, it's really hard to not want her to have it all, like it would be be so great, and it would go along with character. But I feel like in this episode, they did something really small and subtle. But so after she wielded, the way that it should have been wielded, it was still maybe not like perfect, but she did it very well, precision with the stab, like at the end and everything. After that whole thing, and he's getting up and stuff, he just like takes all of his stuff and his guns and just puts like the saber like on his side, like doesn't even say anything, talk about it, anything, and it was just like, man, like you're cutting your own leg using this thing. And she just saved your life using it, and then you're just like, all right, we better see you later.
Well, because
it's like
in the episode of
it wasn't even hard for her to fight the big robot with it, and I liked that scene because
her slide underneath it, that was so slick.
I've been hearing a lot of people, especially like from the Obi-Wan show, that kind of Disney has made lightsabers not be able to cut anything anymore. And I feel like this kind of felt more right with how a lightsaber should be. She was cutting up that robot pretty good.
It reminded me actually of Obi-Wan with that spider monster in the Colosseum or whatever, like cutting off the legs and going around. And that was sweet. I was just getting like flashbacks to that. The other thing is, whatever that monster is, or whatever that alien entity is, or whatever that is, like obviously part, flesh, and then also part, but mostly like, can control these different animatronics and droid parts and stuff like that. I was like Hezekiah's like, is that General Grievous? I was like, it totally is, especially when he gets up on his legs and starts walking. I was like, dude, that's totally Grievous. Even like the eye looks like Grievousy, like menacing.
It definitely felt like he was, because he was a biomechanical, and so it definitely felt like he was
looking for.
He was somewhat kind of like Grievous, and especially because it seemed to me like he was trying to take Din's blood.
Yeah.
He was trying to harvest him somehow, so either that's his food source, or maybe he just needs that to stay alive. Because it was clear that that he was doing that to other Mandalorians. He basically set a trap. Okay, so I want to ask this. When Din finds that Mandalorian helmet, especially to Q, when he finds the Mandalorian helmet in the dirt and the way it's pointed, it looked exactly like the Mandalorian helmets from Knights of the Old Republic, with the tiny slit.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my goodness, that's an Easter egg to Knights of the Republic, because in there their helmets are a little different and they have just like the tiniest of T. Like, you think you can't see out of the Mandalorian helmets today.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, like she was totally. It's like she's just built for the weight, because they talked about it in the episode in Book of Boba Fett, The Return of the Mandalorian, where the armorer is saying it's heavy. It's you're fighting against it. It's basically, well, the way I understand it is it carries the weight of the Mandalorian people.
Mm-hmm.
And in order to wield it, you need to be able to carry that load, which to me means that Din is not ready to carry it yet. But Bo-Katan has carried it. She even's like, I ruled here for a short time.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else, like when he first went down and you see the cityscape, all the buildings collapsed and how desolate it was, just get Clone Wars flashback of how beautiful that city used to be,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
and just be like, oh man, it's not like, I mean, it's totally destroyed. No one is inhabiting that place except for these monsters.
Swamp people or whatever. What'd you say? They live in the swamps or something like that in the outskirts. Now
Yeah.
They just used to live in the outside the city walls where it's not safe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love also the fact that, you know, Grogu, since he doesn't really speak, I feel like anyone he's with, even if they're not big talkers, end up talking more than they probably would, because there's no there's no talking on the other end. So I love the fact that in this episode, I feel like she's being more open, with him, and telling like little bits of history and trivia and stuff. And then
Mm-hmm.
even like at the end, like as they're like getting to the waters and stuff, I love how she's even opening up with Din now, you know, kind of saying way more than she probably would to the average person. But it's cool because obviously us watching it now, we're getting all these little tidbits, the way that she views the past and history and her place in it, and the downfall versus him. And so it's kind of cool as a viewer to
Mhm.
kind of see how she views it through her own eyes. And obviously, Katie Sackhoff is just an amazing actress, so you're along for the ride. You're like totally in it whenever she's saying something. You're just like in it, like, oh man, this is so awesome. I love this episode for everything that she told us about Mandalore.
And even Din said it must be hard for you, having seen it in its glory.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
yeah, it was, and the amount, because if you look back in the Clone Wars and you can see it, and then just the destruction, and like they even say, she says it's not even that long ago. She says
Yeah.
it was, what, maybe 10 years ago at the most. And Din goes, it looks like it's been centuries. It's been sitting for centuries. Like, that's how deeply that the Empire destroyed Mandalore.
Mhm.
And when I was watching it, and he's describing Mandalore, and he tells Grogu that he's like, and I haven't even been there. He goes, I grew up over there, and I just repeated it before he said it, but I was like, Concordia. Like, of course he came from Concordia.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that they did that too, because, and then also it shows his perspective on it, because he was never able to go in person, but he saw it from the sky, and he even saw it. He would have been able to see it from the moon. So when he thinks of it, he thinks of it as like, just like a blue and green, beautiful planet, maybe
Mm-hmm.
similar to, seeing like the Earth from space or something like that. He's able to see that, probably from the moon. Even though never being there, he still remembered seeing the planet in a beautiful state.
Yeah, because I mean, he became a foundling during probably the end of the Clone Wars, right? And Mandalore wasn't destroyed until at least after the beginning of the rebellion.
You know,
We get to see it. We get to see it with in Rebels, where it's pretty much the same as it looks like in the Clone Wars, and that's when Bo-Katan gets to rule. So it's obviously destroyed under her rule.
so but it's interesting too, because the Empire came in and destroyed him, obviously. But what Bo-Katan is saying she hates is not the Empire, but that the infighting that tore the Mandalorians apart, and being the fact that she knows that from firsthand experience as being part of Death Watch initially, and she's seen what that did, and that's why she's laying. She's like, that's what made it so we were unable to fight the Empire, is we were all different factions and basically all hated each other, even though we're all the same people.
Yeah.
I feel like the history of Mandalorians has been that ever since they lost the war against the Republic. I know that's more on the
legend side, but yeah,
Star Wars, but ever since they were defeated by Revan and the Republic, that they were never the same force that they were before that, which is what they were known for, is their fight. And we know that there was a war between the Mandalorians and the Jedi, because we get that in Rebels. That's a canon statement.
Yeah,
Now
it's
the size of it and the scope, we don't know as much, but that was definitely a Knights of the Republic nod there in Rebels.
Yeah. And I think like it is important to kind of start hearing a little bit more of this, so we can start piecing the canon together, right? Like, so I love that they're giving little hints. They're not giving it all, and it still allows us to have a little bit of our own head canon is like what we kind of wanted the history to be. But piecing a little bit of it together, I love that it's kind of making things fit. Obviously, we know the people behind it are very invested in making sure all of these different things fit and trying to make all Star Wars fans happy. But one thing I really like about it too is, like, when you brought that up about the infighting, it is really important to kind of think about that and realize what she wants, and what hasn't changed. She wanted all the Mandalorians to be together and not be fighting each other. And it all came down to, I can't remember the exact word she put it, but something like, they're arguing about opinions that people don't even understand, or or like they didn't even really like understand why they were fighting, or like what was, why somebody was so strong about this or XYZ. And obviously she believes that Din and the Children of the Watch and everything are like an extremist cult, and so like there's still obviously those different feelings in there. If you put that across the whole planet, you can understand why they couldn't have all came together for one cause, which was the most important cause of all, and fighting for the planet and for all the people of Mandalore. They couldn't do that. And so I think kind of knowing where that is, like, it would be interesting to see Din change his mind about the whole thing. But I think realistically, like Q said, I do think it almost like it makes more sense that Bo-Katan, we're going to see her story and coming to power versus Din, because I don't like it doesn't really make sense for, I mean, she could kind of help him change, but I don't really see him changing to the point of being like, okay, I'm going to be the leader of all the people now. Like, I don't know.
I mean, in this episode, they went to the point of explaining that she was royalty, right?
Right.
Yeah.
That was a very interesting, talking about her father, who I don't think we've ever seen before. And we know her sister ruled Mandalore during the Clone Wars era.
Right.
So, I mean, they went to some pretty big lengths to explain her royalty, and I still think she's the best fit to rule Mandalore.
I love
it's not only is she an excellent Mandalorian, like she's skillful, she's knowledgeable, but she's also has that royalty to her.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved that conversation between her and Din. And she goes, "Well, he died defending Mandalore," and we don't know, like you said, we don't know the full story there. But his response was, "This is the way."
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And
he took a moment, stopped, and you could tell he was doing it definitely out of respect and reverence. But I almost feel like based on her face, she was like, and then later when she talked about like doing the ceremony that she did or whatever, and she was like, oh, it was cute, and like, people loved it and all this type of stuff, but like it's like that's not what's important to her. Whereas like to Din, that is like all of those things, following this creed and being so strict, that is like to live by. Whereas she's just like, no, that he was a great man. Like my father wasn't just, he wasn't just this, like he was a great dad, basically, is what she was kind of saying. Like she was kind of almost superseding, like, oh yeah, we did do that stuff, but it wasn't like, it was
Or
like more like a, I don't know.
Well, what I was thinking was not just, I mean, obviously along the lines of a great dad, but also along the lines of the ceremonial stuff was that's what it was. It was just ceremonial. It wasn't important. What was important was taking care of the people of Mandalore.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how she is too. Like she wants to help. She's not trying to rule for power. She wants to rule to better the people.
okay, but here I'll bring this point out. You agree, she thought all that stuff was more or less superstition. She doesn't, believe that there's anything in the water. She doesn't believe basically any of those.
Well, there's holy water.
And I mean, she basically believes that all that's superstition. It's basically, it doesn't really affect her and how she lives her life.
Kind of read that plaque with sarcasm.
Yeah, but then she goes down and gets Din, and technically we only know for sure that Bo-Katan saw the mythosaur. Because we don't know if Din was awake at all. He might have been passed out. And so
I watched it again just a few minutes ago, and you get a good look at that mythosaur's face. It is a big creature.
Yeah.
And the plaque that was there talked about how Mandalore the Great was the one that tamed the mythical beast. And that's I love that term, Mandalore the Great. Because that's something you hear about, again, in the Old Republic. Talking about Mandalore the Great. What's his name? It's Ordo's. What's Ordo's first name, Tyler? Canderous. Canderous Ordo takes up the helmet and the title of Mandalore. And that's something that I think we're going to get. We're either going to get Bo or we're going to get Din as Mandalore the Great. That's the title they're gonna take at some point.
And see, that's almost where where my kind of point was with her, the way she was reading it. She didn't really believe in that, but almost seeing that, she's maybe realizing that it's maybe real, that she's realizing that this folklore is there's truth to it. And so maybe she starts to believe in the creed a little bit more.
Yeah. It's really tough. Like if you just like think it all the way through too, is, obviously everybody likes an underdog in most stories, but it's just, Din is so like into, like following, he's just, he doesn't, it's kind of strange because there's moments where you're like, oh man, he took control of this situation or that situation, but like as a person, he's not a leader, whereas like Bo-Katan is, like, she just, in everything she does is like leader material, so it's like, maybe like you said, maybe this episode does make a turn even for Din too, and for her, but like her kind of stepping back and Din stepping up would be a lot, I feel like.
I think that the whole Grogu situation is teaching him, especially now when you were seeing him more teach Grogu about being a Mandalorian and the way. and that has all been preparing him, because, you know, in Star Wars there's a lot of maybe wasn't more the reluctant hero. That's kind of what he is. But there's a thing in Star Wars called destiny, which kind of, it almost feels like that's where it's going with this Din, and it seems like these episodes he's more or less learning from Bo-Katan, because if we're going to talk about the prophecies that they have been discussing, then the armorer was saying that the prophecy was that basically Bo-Katan took the sword not through combat, and it brought down a curse on Mandalore. The other prophecy that was told is that the mythosaur would rise and herald a new age for Mandalore.
Yeah, that's the songs of eons past
Yeah.
that foretold that the mythosaur rising up to herald a new age of Mandalore. Yeah.
And so
I think that was kind of, when I just saw that was what was featured on the previously on, I kind of got a feeling we might see the mythosaur, but I was not expecting, I don't know. I kind of thought so, but it still took me for surprise when we actually got to see it.
I was just super excited that it's even a real thing. Like,
Yeah. I mean, it is,
or that it exists now, because there's obviously bones, so we knew it was a real thing, but like, yeah, that there's still one that exists, and then if it's the same one, because they said that it lived there, right? So like, is this the same one from way back then, and it's just like hundreds and hundreds of years
even the armorer doesn't seem to believe that the prophecy, because she just says the songs talk about it. She doesn't really believe about it, because and according to her words, it makes it, she basically is like, well, that new age can't come from Mandalore because the mythosaur is extinct.
Yeah.
And so this is like a whole revelation for the entire Mandalorian people. I mean, this is literally their entire culture is built off of the symbol of the skull of this creature.
Yeah.
mm-hmm.
And whether anyone rides it or not, the simple fact that it exists and that the folklore told, basically, it just validates all the lessons you were told as a young person, or even the folk stories. Maybe they're not all just stories. Maybe there's some truth to them.
I do wonder, like, what happened. Did it like grab him and pull him down? Did he step off a ledge and fall down? But either way, like, he's just like sitting at the bottom of the water down there.
Yeah, I was curious about that too. Did he just walk off the edge and just sink? And we definitely saw he took his jetpack off before he went into the water.
Mm-hmm.
That was a bad idea. Should have just kept it on.
Yeah.
I mean, she did, and it worked. So
yeah, that was one question.
Maybe his isn't waterproof.
Away with, and then I was like, obviously, if it did do something to him, it obviously didn't want to kill him per se, because it definitely had the ability to do so. And then even as they were escaping, you would imagine it would have been able to do something or come up out of the water, and it still could on the next episode. But either way, I was like, was it just happenstance that he fell down there and didn't have his jetpack to swim back up, because Beskar's super heavy, wearing a whole suit of it anyways, not in general, but, and then, it just happened that she had to go save him. And when she came up, she saw it when he's like just peacefully living down there, not trying to eat anybody or anything.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and it's kind of, interesting. Was it just hibernating and growing, or and it was kind of...
Did they wake it up?
Oh, that's a good question too. Yeah.
I mean, if he wasn't awake, when the whole planet was destroyed.
That's fair.
He's in a deep slumber.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder what its body looks like.
I know. That's what I was thinking, because it's, it's dragon or like, so, is it like, I wonder if it's like, kind of
Picture more
slender
like-
body with wings, or.
See, I'm thinking more like Chinese dragon, where it's got arms and like 4 legs,
Oh, okay.
kind of
yeah.
like the Great Dragon from KOTOR, Knights of the Republic.
Yeah, that's what I don't think it
Kinda like a big
flies.
lizard. I mean, it might still fly, but
Yeah, because that changes a lot too. Like if you think about it, like riding like a winged dragon creature versus riding like
a walking dragon creature.
like like a centipede
giant
looking
Komodo dragon.
thing, or like a Komodo dragon. Yeah, that's more realistic. Or like
Hmm.
either one is pretty cool, but it just changes a lot in your head of what you imagine. Somebody being able to tame and ride.
Yeah.
I
Well, we
think
talk
in
about
the
how Mandalore the Great was able to ride it, and I feel like that means that it must be able to survive outside of water, right? So I'm
Mhm.
thinking, like, if you look back at the Phantom Menace and the really, really big fish that eats fish fish look like they're as big as that mythiosaur, at least, right? Comparable size-wise. Because mythiosaur looks like they could have easily opened its mouth and just swallowed them, but so could that of giant fish in the core of Naboo.
Uh-huh.
But that thing probably doesn't survive outside of water, so
Mhm.
therefore it's not really a threat to people. I don't know. I still feel like it'd be a threat if it could go out to the ocean, but I mean, I think it's like that's some lore we need to get some more backstory on. That monster is gigantic.
there's always a bigger fish.
Mhm.
Yeah, just the lore, and I like how they're like taking pieces from legends and then kind of putting in their own ideas and twists in it, and you just kind of don't know where it's going, but you're also like, okay, this is similar, this is all the legend stuff, and it's just exciting because I think of like a mythosaur more like a really big dinosaur, like the biggest dinosaur ever, or if not bigger, way bigger. And because I'm thinking, like, this thing looks like it could eat Boba Fett and riding his Rancor. It just
Yeah,
like swallow him whole.
and the Rancor.
And the Rancor, yeah.
Yeah.
Right. It's not, because I mean, they were almost the size of its eye.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
Heavy,
question
satisfying.
for question for both of you guys. Do you think this next episode we're gonna like see it? Or do you think this is gonna be like an end of the season situation where we see it?
Yeah, I feel like
I think we might see it again, but if anybody is going to ride it, it's going to be a end of the season thing. Just like we got, like Towers mentioned, Boba Fett, we got the Rancor in like episode 3 or 4, and we're all like, "Oh, is he actually going to get to ride it?" And no, we didn't see that till the very end. So
yeah,
I'm
and
thinking we might see it again, but I don't think we're going to get the victory riding the mythiosaur moment we want until the end.
I almost
If
feel
we
like
get it this season.
I feel like somehow the next episode is going to be him going back to the armor saying, I did it, I did it, I did it, and the mythosaur exists. We saw it, and
I don't know if he saw it though. That's the thing.
yeah, that's true. That's true. He could have. Maybe he saw it. Maybe he saw it as he fell.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I think seeing it is going to change some ideas in Bo-Katan's head, and she's going to re-rule Mandalore again. I don't know. I just want her to be the ruler.
I know.
I love Din, but there's no Bo-Katan.
Mm-hmm.
I do. Yeah, I agree with it. Definitely changes stuff for Bo-Katan. It definitely maybe gives her more motivation to try to reunite everyone.
Yeah. Another thing to think about, and especially going back to Tales of the Jedi, which we just got recently, what if there's a moment or a connection with Grogu in the mythosaur? You
And
know,
and
like
he's the new Mandalore.
maybe not that far,
I
but
mean,
like
I could see
stuff
that
like
eventually because he should be able to wield the dark saber because he's got the Force to help him, right?
That is something we
That-
haven't even touched on
I-
this episode.
No,
When he dropped it, the guy that with the one-eyed guy who was taking the gear off of Mando,
Mhm.
I so wanted Grogu to grab the dark saber, and
I know.
I wanted that fight.
Yep, right when that
Grogu with the dark
happened,
saber.
that's exactly what my wife said. That's exactly what Lily said. Like,
Or just
as
throw
soon
it
as
at
that
him.
happened, she was like, he could totally wield it because, like, I think there's a lot of like, there's weight to carrying it. There's the skill that you need, but also like the force would definitely help him and
Mhm.
compensate for whatever inadequacies for him to be able to wield it properly. And I was like thinking about it. I was like, he actually could, like, maybe if he, we don't really know to what extent that he trained, but he if he was even able to like hold it and do
Mhm.
a precise jab into that little guy's eye, I was like, he totally could. So I was wondering if there's going to be something like that. And then who's the one that basically used Mandalorian force to grab it? Bo.
Yeah, right.
with the grapple.
Okay,
With the
but this is
the-
this is something I wanted to touch on though with Grogu. His John Favreau said that basically he had spent 2 years with Luke. That's what they said.
Mhm.
And he said you're going to start to see him learning that he's more powerful with the Force now. And we saw at the very beginning of this episode when they land in Tatooine and he sees Peli, he just flies himself over there. He just jumped right in her arms all the way from the ship. And she's like, who taught you how to jump like that? And then he does the same thing in this episode when he goes back to he tries to break the containment thing that's holding Din, and then when he can't do that and he decides to run, he jumps all the way across the room and into his pod.
Yeah. And then
Well, he force pushes the monster too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
out of the
Yeah.
cave.
And something fell off of that monster. Did you guys see that?
Yes, I
Like,
did.
what-
Something
he like,
something
There's like a bag of
wasn't it?
green goo.
I was like, I think he did a little more than push him. I don't know what that was.
It looked like
I
a
think
bag
that
of
was a
green
body-
goo to me, but I thought maybe like that
body
was just. I mean, it could be. I wasn't sure what it was, but it was definitely. So we're definitely seeing him grow in his use of the Force, and it's not big. And also, the first season he used the Force and he passed out.
Oh, that, yeah. And I was wondering about that too, because we hadn't really seen him use like a lot of his strength yet so far. And so I was wondering, I was like, oh man, that'd be so bad if like he tries to like open or break that the prison like little thing or whatever he was trapped in, break the bars or something like that, and then he like can't do it and then he passes out too. But yeah. So
You think about just what he did in this episode in quick succession. He tried to break the cage that Din was in. He then jumped across the room to his pod. Then he force pushed that thing out of the way, all immediately back to back to back. He didn't pass out. He got into the N1 and told the droid, "Go here."
yeah.
So because I mean, we know he's extremely powerful. I mean, he can. What was it? It was the second season or second episode of The Mandalorian where he lifted the mud horn. Like, I mean, that's a large animal. Of course, we know that you can't judge anything by its size. It's all the same in the Force, realistically. But just using the Force took a large amount of energy for him, and he would pass out for long periods of times, and now he's not. So, at the very least, he's learning to be able to sustain that.
Yeah. And the other thing you think about too is like, I think all that stuff is true, but the other kind of thing to think about is we don't know that much about their species and stuff like that still. And if you think about like Yoda, when he fought Dooku, basically the same thing happened to him in that moment too. He was able to draw upon the Force for as long as he really needed to, but then afterwards it took a lot out of him,
Mm-hmm.
and so you know it could just always be something that Grogu is going to have to deal with, like that he can have a really strong connection to the Force and everything like that, but after prolonged use, it's still going to wipe him out because he is still a little tiny tyke, you know.
But so that was an interesting part. The other thing is that Bo-Katan talks to him, asking like, "Are you getting stronger in the Force? You must be pretty strong to have gotten all the way to me by yourself."
Yeah.
And I like the conversation when she's like, because we talked already about the Mandalorian wars with the Jedi, but then she says in this episode that they were basically friends. I was friends with Jedi, and I fought side by side with Jedi.
Mhm.
We actually made a good pair.
Mm-hmm. And then she says, also like something in the present tense along the lines of, you know, that maybe she just says like, I know Jedi or something like that. Like she was talking in the present as well. So I was like, you know, I wonder if she knows more than we know that she knows, if that makes sense.
Well, I mean, she does. We does because in season 2, she's the one that sent Din to Ahsoka.
That's true. Yeah.
So she knows at least that Ahsoka at least was alive, and that I'm assuming that's also who she's talking about having worked with, because in Clone Wars season 7, there's basically them two versus Maul.
Mhm.
Yeah. Is this the first time we got to see the Mandalorian fighter ship in live action?
I think moving. I think it was in the end of season 2, but it was just sitting outside.
And
Okay.
that thing took off, and they started flying. I was like, oh, I got goosebumps.
I
Yeah,
That
know.
thing is so cool.
I
Yeah,
love that
It
shit.
looks better in live action. Like it looks awesome.
Yeah, immediately when we saw it, like all of us and Hezekiah too, was like, oh my god, like our Lego set. Like it's
Yes.
just it's an amazing built Lego build in general, but like that ship's so awesome. I love just the way that it maneuvers and everything's so cool.
Yeah.
I can't wait till I'm thinking we're gonna get to see it fight, and that thing is cool when they fight. The way the way it moves.
Oh man, can we get that plus the N1 against some pirates, please?
Ooh,
I feel like that's not going to be too far away, realistically, because I think
yeah.
we don't really know where the next episode is going to go, because I feel like it could go like he's going to go back to the armorer and talk to her, and basically say, "Look at all this stuff that's real, and we can change." But at the same time, I also think that how we talked about it could be a change in Bo-Katan's mind of her entire thought process that we might just pick up right there, and something might change.
I mean, if you think about it, both of them bathed in the life waters below Mines of Mandalore.
So what if she challenges him for the saber right there? That's the start of the next episode.
Yeah, and what if she kills him and then throws him in the water and Mythosaur eats him?
No,
Okay,
Mythosaur sticks him.
well, we know that's not going to happen. We know he's not going to die. I mean, come on.
Yeah. She take over training Grogu.
Yeah.
Grogu turned to the dark side and rule Mandalore just like Maul did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just like it's the prophecy, just like Anakin. There's gonna be some dark times. Oh man.
But I'm kind of serious. Like, I mean, you could see some kind of challenge. She could challenge him right there, and maybe he loses the Darksaber to her, and then he goes back to the armorer. Now, what does he tell the armorer? I bathed in the waters. I know the Mythosaur exists, but I lost in combat the Darksaber to Bo-Katan. Does that create more infighting?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I do wonder too, like, are we gonna get like the confrontation necessarily here between the two of them, or is it gonna happen back at her place because his ship's there? So either way, they all would basically have to get there at some point, and then yeah, that does kind of beg the question of, are we gonna see more of her? Is she gonna go with him to
Mm-hmm.
basically reveal this new information where, and then obviously we know how she feels about the children of the watch as a whole, so maybe this might, like you were saying, give her the change of mind to at least go there and speak with them and say like, yeah, like I saw it.
I mean, yeah, that sect is a pretty big part of, but there's a lot of Mandalorians in it, so
Yeah.
it could be important for them to be all united. They would need her as well. They would need
So,
them.
yeah, and because the people who are following her have all but deserted her. We haven't seen any Mandalorians. There's nothing but the droid at her castle, and
Beautiful castle.
and because he even asks what happened to the stolen fleet. He's talking about the Imperial fleet that they stole at the end of season 2, but they said basically they're scattered. They're making their way as mercenaries throughout the galaxy. So how does she get them back?
Yeah, I kind of feel like in a way it's like them teaming up could really make the connection, at least of the two. I think Bo-Katan could still, get and, conjure up a pretty good following, right?
He,
And then he could possibly too, right? So like them together,
yeah.
you know.
So they're gonna this is how it's gonna go down. Is they're gonna bring their two groups. They're gonna make up. They're gonna get married. They're gonna rule Mandalore together.
I'd be okay with that.
Yeah, I'm good with that. And then it's understandable.
And they have a kid already.
Yes. Yeah, and like that could be understandable because what he lacks, she can fill in,
Mm-hmm.
so them together. Yeah.
And then they raise Grogu, and he can rule for generations because of how long he lives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You could rule for like 8 generations.
This is some serious speculation here.
He already has like the Beskar mesh armor. So
He's a helmet now, right?
yeah.
Can't take it
Pretty
off.
easy.
See, that's what's
he can.
that's what I'm thinking, because I understood. I kind of thought we were going to go into this season with they were going to try to get rid of that.
Mm-hmm.
That they were going to like somehow get
'cause
rid
even
of that
Death
role.
Watch, in the Clone Wars, they took their helmets off. That wasn't a thing that they did in the Clone Wars. This is, I think, a new thing that they've started ever since the destruction of Mandalore. It's almost like they're embarrassed, so they hide behind their helmets.
Yeah.
But if we ride the great mythiosaur and we rebuild Mandalore to be what it was, we don't need to hide ourselves anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
yeah, and because I kind of figured that because I had read a rumor that they had written some way with where that basically so Pedro Pascal could show his face more. And so I kind of thought that that's where it was going. And so it's kind of interesting if Bo-Katan's going to have this change of heart and more follow the creed. Does she go, oh yeah, but that whole helmet taking thing off, that's not really part of the creed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe she convinced them that it's exactly what I said, that she needs to convince them that we don't need to hide anymore. Because they talk about hiding in the groups, hiding in small groups. That's what they're literally doing. The children of the Watch are hiding, and she needs to
Yeah.
convince them that it's time to stop hiding.
Mm-hmm.
to join her army.
Yeah, I heard stuff about like the writing, of wanting to like see his face more and stuff like that. I personally, I don't think that really has anything to do with the story or like swayed this like the Mandalorian at all. Like personally, I do think that they wrote in scenes for Kylo Ren though to be shirtless. That has nothing to do with the script. That was definitely written
or this
there.
episode, or this entire conversation. You just wanted to bring it up again.
Yep, 100%. The sequels definitely added that. They're like, man, how can we? Oh, we can have them that they connect in the Force, and he happens to be shirtless.
Or maybe Adam Driver just didn't finish getting dressed and he walked out on set. They're like, all right, let's just go with it.
Yes, do that. Yeah, no.
Oh, that got off topic.
That will be interesting to see, like where they.
Star Wars really nothing's off topic.
Yeah, it's true.
True.
I mean, I don't know. I feel like Star Wars has never really been about a love story, but I could definitely see there being a lot of. I could see them.
But it is about family.
Yeah.
And that's.
I could see them.
And that's what the Mandalorians are.
Build the Empire.
That's what.
And then eventually learning to love each other. I mean, how many times did she rescue him in this episode alone? She rescued him twice already, just for this episode.
That's true.
Mm-hmm.
She rescued him twice. After when she saw the ship arrive to her planet, she's like, "Let's get rid of him for good this time." That's what she said to her droid.
Yeah.
I was like, "Is she going to kill him? Is that how she gets rid of him for good?" And then she goes and rescues him twice in the next 20 minutes of episode. So.
Mm-hmm.
It's obvious that she's a good person, right?
I just thought
bad.
I thought it was funny because then she's like, "Oh, I'll take you down to the living waters," because I kind of was laughing because they took her ship back to the planet, so his ship is at her castle,
right?
So she's thinking, yeah, if I don't help you and you leave here, I know I'm gonna get a call in like a few hours, and you're gonna be like, "Hey, can you come pick me up?"
Not just that, like I kind of got the feeling that she wanted to see it for herself, just to prove to herself that it's not real, that there's no power to it, and that's kind of why I feel like there might have been that lingering in her that was like, I kind of want to see it for myself, just to prove and to see how he'll react when it's not real, and then seeing the mythiosaur down there. I don't know.
It's hard to say.
I'm not gonna say she's not like, okay, I'm a child with a watch, I'm gonna take my helmet off again. But I think there is gonna be something to it that makes her want to regroup and retake Mandalore.
Yeah, I know that's a huge deal, but I still don't necessarily know. I mean, it's totally unexpected for her, but I don't know if that really was what her issue was. Like the issue is like you going into the water and coming out isn't going to change you as a person in any way, like by itself. I do think that this is going to be a big deal moving forward, but I still don't think that she's, like you're saying, she's not going to be like, "Oh man, you guys were right the whole time," or whatever, this water is holy and sacred or whatever, So like it'll be interesting to see both of their takes from it. And yeah, like you guys mentioned too, like if he even seen it, obviously that's going to make a big difference. And then I wonder, are we not going to hear any more about this whole story until the end of the season now? If this was just like a huge tease and now we got to wait 5 more episodes or 6 more episodes to see something.
I'm just excited because they like advertised like this was the whole point of the season, and then we got this all out of the way in the first 2 episodes. So I'm just like,
I mean, I feel like almost every preview that we saw was these 2 episodes.
Yeah,
you saw the group of Mandalorians standing together. That was obviously the scene on the beach, even though I expected that to be like way into the season. Got that first episode, and then we got the glimpses of Mandalore. The city destroyed in the caves. We got to see that. I don't think there's anything else in the previews really that we.
There's a few ship battles, and the big one is
We
the
didn't see the ship battle in the first episode. We got to see Grogu.
yeah, but there's a couple that ship battles that I saw that I haven't seen already, and then the big one that we haven't seen is the either callback or whatever it is the Jedi.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
true. That's
or a
true.
66 flashback.
Yeah, that's one of the few things that like we haven't seen. But yeah, but basically they worded the trailers like the whole point of the season was to his journey to get into the living waters, to bathe himself, to redeem himself. And now that is done, we have all these episodes coming up that literally are just going to move the story past that.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I
I
love
think,
that. I love when we get into a situation where you have no idea what's going to happen next, and it's all 100% speculation, and so it's exciting every episode to wonder what's going to happen next. And so yeah, I think having all this happen in the first 2 episodes is pretty sweet because it gets you excited for the rest of the season, especially because the length of the first episode, and really, to be honest, the second one, I was like, dang it. Every time I log in, I'm like, come on, it'd be like 58 minutes. And then when it was like 37, I was like, no.
yeah,
But anyways, yeah. So yeah.
but still they
this is a
crammed
good
a
one,
lot into 44 minutes in this episode.
for sure.